One of the ground basics we must consider when making an analysis on the area of Cuicuilco is that we are talking about an archaeological site that got eaten by one of the biggest cities of the world. That's why one of the main characteristics that can be felt inside this place is contrast. While being surrounded by a vast ancient culture and nature, in the outside we have one of the most important avenues in Mexico City, a lot of noise, and the city surroundings.
Cuicuilco was one of the most important preclassic settlements in the Valley of Mexico. Although it is not known with certainty which culture built it, it is known that the founders were one of the most important populations of the preclassic. Cuicuilco was a ceremonial center which had its apogee between 200 before Christ and 250 after death, in which its conical architecture stands out. These constructions with a peculiar form are an example of monumental architecture that is presented for the first time in the Valley of Mexico. This type of architecture is not known in any civilization around the area. Cuicuilco had about 20,000 inhabitants. At its apogee, the settlement had retail buildings, water system, agricultural spaces, and housing units for ordinary people. All the previous buildings were around the main pyramid. It is probable that Cuicuilco had a lot of power because it is believed that it controlled the resources of the region, access routes of exchange to the valleys of Morelos and Toluca, as well as other routes towards the south, east, and west of the Valley of Mexico. It is believed that the fall of Cuicuilco occurred by a natural phenomenon, the explosion of the volcano Xitle, that took place around 250 after death. The eruption brought disaster to the settlement, forcing its inhabitants to leave this space. Nowadays, the nature that surrounds the ecological zone of Cuicuilco makes you feel as if you left the city and you transported to some rural area, in which trees, nopales, encinos, and a wide variety of flora surrounds you. Cuicuilco is covered by nature. We can only see fragments of the stones with which this archaeological space was constructed. It seems that nature has taken over this site, since the whole construction is full of it. The architectural merged with the nature to give a new aspect to the architectural work. As we know, nature plays an important role in this archaeological zone, because with the eruption of volcano Xitle, this site was abandoned. But in addition to provoke this, the eruption presented a turn in the appearance of Cuicuilco. The volcanic rock molded this space. To observe the landscape, erasing the buildings or constructions that are found today, we find a series of mountains and hills that surround the archaeological center. From the highest point, you can see how the constructions plays with the landscape. The natural space that surrounds Cuicuilco, merged with architecture, the gigantic natural scale with the created by man generates a dependence on each other. Perhaps the conic shape of the main construction of Cuicuilco refers to a circumference that the mountains form around it, almost as if the mountains function as a natural frame for the monumental work that the preclassic man had created.
The climate where Cuicuilco is located nowadays, Tlalpan, is generally warm and humid. According to Data.Climate.org, the average temperature is 15.8 degrees, and the average precipitation in the area is 857 millimeters a year. It rains more in the summer than in the winter. Summers also tend to be long, and they are very hot. The typical climate is between 6.5 degrees and 22 degrees, give or take between 5 and 7 degrees.
As most of the important constructions built by Mesoamerican cultures, it's very important to mention Cuicuilco's defined orientation, marked by its stairs and ramps from east to west. This as a clear evidence of this place's religious background and the way, since these early times, cultures would reflect their cosmovision through architecture.
Cuicuilco is located in the Valley of Mexico, a highland plateau in the central part of the country where the capital is located. The as well as part of the state of Mexico. It is surrounded by many mountains and volcanoes, among them Xitle, which was responsible for Cuicuilco's destruction. Many cultures around the Valley of Mexico found it important because it is where Teotihuacan and Tenochtitlan were located. There are many volcanoes in this area because the Earth's crust is quite weak in this area. There are also many faults nearby, and the horizontal movements caused by this fault are the ones that created Sierra Nevada, Sierra de las Cruces, and Serranía del Ajusco.
Cuicuilco was one of the most important cultures in Mesoamerica. It is a key factor to explain the appearance and development of the high cultures in Mesoamerica. Cuicuilco is located in the Preclassic period, a period characterized by wars and rearrangements in society, economy, and culture. In its heyday, Cuicuilco had a population between 20,000 and 40,000 people, which made it the first itinerant center of the zone. The archaeological zone of Cuicuilco is very important because it was the first place where we can see monumental architecture made of stone and with a cylindrical shape. Cuicuilco was discovered in 1922 and it was restored in 1925. Then in 1939, Eduardo Noruega opened Cuicuilco to the public and he made a museum. After that, in the year of 1968, Villa Olímpica was built and many archaeological zones were completely destroyed or seriously damaged. Then, in 1996, the excavations resumed and several discoveries were made, like a stele at the foot of the great basement and some burials.
Today, Cuicuilco is emerged in Mexico City. Although it is still surrounded by nature, the settlements create a contrast of times, with a landscape of building and constructions that surround the archaeological site. The main pyramid still has its original shape, perhaps not very well defined, as time and natural disasters have changed it. Maybe this preclassic settlement has already been forgotten, because the city has surrounded with its imposing buildings. Cuicuilco reminds us of what was once our territory. It is interesting to note how an entire city has grown around the settlement that at one time was one of the most powerful and important civilizations in the Valley of Mexico.